How is everybody? Happy Thursday. Everybody doing okay? Good, you can hear me. Good. You guys can hear me in the back okay? Good. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. Welcome to the Poetry Center. My name's Tyler. I work here as the director. We're really pleased that you're here this Thursday. It's a special Thursday at the Poetry Center because we have a poet with us who speaks many languages. And I think we're going to get a chance to hear many of those languages tonight. How many people here are bilingual? How many people are trilingual? How many are quadlingual? Not many. I am jealous of all of you. And I'm really excited for Volha Hapeyeva, who's here with us, who's traveled very far to be here, perhaps our poet who's traveled the farthest to be at the Poetry Center this year. And so maybe we give a big round of applause to Volha for that travel and for joining us. And we'll hear more about Volha and her work in a moment. But I want to tell you a couple of things that are happening at the Poetry Center coming up, and then talk a little bit about a collaboration that helped make tonight possible. And if you need, there's more seats. Come in, friends. You guys are more than welcome. There's some seats up front, too. Coming up, so next week at the Poetry Center on the 16th, we'll have the writer Julia Alvarez, best known for her fiction, but also a tremendous poet, a poet first. And she has just released a brand new book called Visitations, and that was out on Tuesday. So it will be one of the launch events that's happening for that book is here on Thursday next week at 7 o'clock. And that will be, again, on the 16th, back here at the Poetry Center. Come join us for that. And then our very last reading of our spring season will be with the Mexican poet Balam Rodrigo, who we're thrilled is coming to Tucson. And that's on April 30th, back here at the Poetry Center at 7 o'clock as well. It has been a really beautiful, big spring season at the Poetry Center. And these are exclamation points at the end. And so we hope you'll be back to see these programs that are in front of us and that are coming. You're already doing great work by being here tonight. Everyone gets an A. Good work. I also want to point out there's one of our collaborators and a student at the U of A who's finishing her undergraduate at the Honors College, Nagasriya Ramasetti. On April 17th, will be presenting her thesis of work. And that's going to happen at the HSIB building, the Health Sciences Innovation Building, about a 5-minute walk away from here, on the 17th from 5 to 7 p.m. And there's information about that that's on this sheet. And I think some of that's on the table that's out in the breezeway. And so if you want to hear what's happening next in poetry in the next generation, come join Nagasriya and that work, again, on the 17th of April. It's a Friday night from 5 to 7 in the HSIB building. If you have not yet had a chance to visit inside the Poetry Center and see the current exhibit that's up, I would encourage you to do so. It is wonderful. It's a curation of materials from our rare book room and our special holdings that feature Indigenous voices and Indigenous poets. So that sampling of all of those materials, it's a tremendous exhibit. I hope you'll spend some time with that. Also, that's not visual right now, but if you had a chance to look in the Poetry Center when it was lit up, there's a display of flags in the front window. And those flags are a partnership with the Office of Native American Advancement and Tribal Engagement. And they are the 22 flags of the 22 recognized nations in Arizona. And they're very beautiful, and it's an incredible array of color and images and iconography. And I hope you'll take a chance to look at those as well when you're over there visiting the exhibit. And spend some time with collections. Books are for sale on my right, and Mark is selling them. He's our model this evening. Good, Mark, can you do okay, great, perfect. And so visit Mark afterwards, and he'd be happy to sell you a book. They're $10 each, and I think we can do a credit card, or if you have cash, that can work as well. Exact change is helpful. We're excited for more books to come. In English translation, and so that's the next thing, and we're hopeful about all of the things that loom with Volha's incredible poetry for English readers, for all readers, but for English readers also. This reading tonight is possible because of a partnership, and that partnership was with a group called Versopolis. Versopolis is a consortium of, it's an EU-based poetry platform, a consortium of poets that are working to create more visibility for EU poets, emerging poets, and more recently building bigger connections and bridges between the EU and the United States, American poets and EU poets, EU reading communities, poetry communities, and American poetry communities. And so we're really thrilled to be in collaboration with this group and looking forward to building on this work in the seasons that come. There's a collaboration of American partners that are part of this, and so the University of Arizona and the Poetry Center is one of them, but the other partners include Georgetown University, Cornell, Princeton, Washington University in St. Louis, and the University of Iowa. And so it's great to be in conversation with these groups, thinking about how we can build bigger connections and a bigger and broader internationalism among poets who are doing work in a contemporary way. Maybe a big round of applause then for Versopolis. That's worth celebrating. And here's to building bridges, which we're excited to be doing. I am excited to welcome up Kelsey Veneta, who's the program director of the American Literary Translators Association, or ALTA. Some of you may know about ALTA. Is based here somewhat in Tucson. Will have its 50th anniversary conference next year, not 2026, but 2027, back in Tucson. They bring together in these conferences hundreds, 500, 600 translators doing the work of moving literature between languages. And that will be in Tucson. It's something we can look forward to. Kelsey helps lead that work for ALTA. She's also a poet and has a wonderful book of poems called Optional Saint, and is a translator of 7 different collections, I think I counted right, from Spanish, from Swedish, and from people from Belarus also writing in Spanish now, most recently, which is pretty exciting. So please help me welcome Kelsey Veneta, who's going to tell us more about Volha Hapeyeva.
Well, good evening, everyone. Volha Hapeyeva writes, "To find the right word, you have to go into the woods, search for it like an enthusiastic mushroom forager. If words were flowers, it would be easier, but words are probably mushrooms. They can be poisonous as well as delicious, and nobody quite knows just where they came from." As a poet, writer, translator, artist, and linguist who lives between multiple languages, Volha Hapeyeva is always searching for the right word. She is from Minsk, Belarus, and writes in both Belarusian and German, and her work has been translated into more than 15 languages. In fact, the excerpt of the poem I just read was originally composed in entirely different words and was translated into English by Annie Rutherford, who is another word forager. In her introduction to Hapeyeva's book, which is on sale tonight, Rutherford writes, "Very few contemporary Belarusian works are available in English, and those which have been translated are mostly by Russian language authors. The choice to write in Belarusian in this 2-language state is very much a political one." Hapeyeva writes about the horrors of violence, war, and authoritarianism, as well as about the body, nature, memory, identity, and language itself, in a spare and haunting style, responding obliquely to such events as the crackdown on protests against rigged elections in Belarus, the ongoing war in neighboring Ukraine, and the cruel effect of the patriarchy. Her lines bring surprising elements together, at times creating surreal image worlds, weapons with the beautiful names of flowers, a garden growing with mutant bodies. Her minimal use of punctuation blurs the boundaries between the large scale and the small, reminding us that division and struggle, as well as change, happen not only on a systemic level, but also at the level of the individual heart and mind. Hapeyeva participates in literary festivals and residencies around the world and has received numerous prizes and awards for her work, including the PEN Translate the English Pen Translates Award and the Wortmeldungen Literature Preis-2022. Since 2020, she has lived in exile in Austria and Germany. Please help me in welcoming Volha Hapeyeva to read for us.
That's okay. Thank you very much. It's such a great honor to be here and such a great joy. Thank you very much, dear Kelsey, for this wonderful introduction. So I already crossed out that poem. I will not read it. Thank you. This is so unusual what I'm seeing here. And oops. No, all is good. Yes, as you already know, I write in Belarusian, and since 2019 I also write in German. And that's why today you will have to listen to my German and my Belarusian. So I will read 2 poems in these languages, but the rest will be in English. And I want to thank again my dear translator, Annie Rutherford, for us to be able to enjoy this evening, because without her work, that wouldn't be possible. Good, then we start. While waiting for the bus, I warm the insides of my thighs on a wooden bench. In summer, you must be obsessive and just have to go swimming to tire yourself out and realize there is no time, only memory. The sea can be replaced by a lake, the lake with a river, poplars with plane trees, the Belarusian town with a Swiss village, but you're still sitting on a wooden bench, thinking of nothing. Kids return from the beach. They don't yet know how to read or write. They have to carry everything inside themselves. That's how memory grows. They fidget, chatter, argue, tussle. The teacher says something, and straight away they take the hand of whoever's standing next to them. That simply, that naturally. It doesn't matter who it is, a friend or enemy. They don't exist yet. They'll arrive later with the letters. But right now, there is only here and now, and the feel of a hand being put into yours, so as to be there in case of danger. I'm not sure now you will have to to applause after every poem so that poems don't feel offended. And some poems of mine are very small, so I worry about your palms. But thank you. How to capture a year in 100 words. Beyond, but, myself like never before. Weightlessness, but, cement pain too. As if it weren't home, but as if it were. Life in antonyms. I check the meanings of words in dictionaries. Patria, locus natalis, Heimat. Which one is Radima? The sage warbler closes her eyes, waiting for the first leaf to unfurl. A true homelet only exists in dreams. Ancient scrolls offer more answers than my newsfeed, which I haven't read for a year now. And I talk with moths and birds more and more often. They don't ask any questions. They just are, and let me simply be where there is no time and no words. This poem was written as an answer to a question I got from a journalist, Belarusian journalist, after the year of protest started, 2020, and they made interviews or asked Belarusian writers and poets and cultural people, like, how was this year for you? So can you describe how did it go? And please, in 100 words. And that was my answer. Someone is burning pages of poems in the universe's attic, perhaps as a sign of protest, because the birds keep forgetting the lines of their songs, now and then inserting the quivering of wires or mimicking the rhythm of rattling trains. Or maybe this is the fastest way for silence to reach its recipients. Silence in which the meanings of all the dictionaries in the world are hidden, and others too. So weightless, so meaningful, this ashy snow outside the window. It will take it less than a minute, but it will take me an eternity. Also, the poems which I read here, I don't know if you notice or not, they are from completely different periods. And there are very old poems, and there are very new poems. A little pony carries little children for money, which their parents pay the owner, but still it's never enough to eat sweet carrots every day. And so for tea tonight, the little pony will be eating dry grass. I'm not like a pony, not much like the wee kids. Could be I'm a carrot, or that grass which you've now been chewing on for years. There was a time when I couldn't read, and so my mom read for me. And then it was written in the book that the little pony carries little children for free. I thought it was a sad poem, Tyler. No, all is good. It's also very interesting how sometimes there is one poem which I read in Belarusian, and then it's quite sad poem, but when I read it in German audience started to laugh at the end. So, yeah, art of translation. When a tree dies, pink nipples bow their heads as a sign of mourning. When a tree dies, it grows dark, for all eyes hide their shame behind eyelash curtains. When a tree dies, I console my lover's pain with medicinal lips. I bandage their body with fingers and hands. When a tree dies, someone takes my head between their palms in silence and falls asleep, while somewhere beyond the window, my tree is dying. I forgot to start the time, how do you say it, countdown? So please, Tyler, signal me when it's 40 minutes ago. Poetry Manifesto. Poems come in different kinds. They may be tall or not really, women or not really. Poems grow too, but they do not need watered. They are not trees, and you are not water. For a poem to grow, he or she needs to be cradled. You may encounter a poem missing a leg or an arm, but that's no need to be sad. They can regrow them like lizards who lose their tails and find them again. Some poems, though, never grow wings, or they grow them, then lose them. Maybe their bodies lack calcium or something. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. First, the poem must be caught. Poems, they scatter, play hide and seek, disguise themselves as prose, and all of that. It is therefore best to use a net. They themselves will only cling onto you if you are running or driving somewhere. They will settle with the wind on hair, on cheeks, will rest there as if on a windscreen, then you can simply go ahead and write them down. Capture when stationary is more difficult. For this, a bait is required. Predatory poems will appreciate a drop of blood. For the more sweet-toothed, a thin stream of honey will do, falling from the spoon back into the jar. And then their corpses, if enough have been gathered and there isn't space to store them, can be nailed to paper pages, published as a book, and thus you will have your own cemetery. There are, however, further approaches and more thorough classifications according to which poems are people. Overly close contact may result in orgasmic or schizophrenic states. It's a very old poem. From the bakery window, an elderly man glances my way. He rolls out the dough. In that Italian village, all his life he baked bread. And now he hangs as a photo in his granddaughter's bakery. In exile, you want to make your reality visible, to not feel like a loner without a history. My own grandpa didn't bake bread. He taught children. So they told me, as by the time we met, he was retired. Would lie on the sofa or sit at the bus stop where no bus had stopped for years. Granddaughter, listen, I'm going to die. That's how he'd usually start his conversations with me. Talks which led nowhere, shifting the topic of death from foot to foot. And I kept thinking that he was just about to say something so important, something only he and I would know. Now he lies as a word on pages of my books, so that I do not feel like a loner without a history. And this is the example. Sometimes as a poet you get the question, how do you write poems? How do they come to you? And this is the example of a poem which took a year to be finished, because I started and I really saw that poster when I was in Graz in Austria as a city writer for 1 year. And I was impressed, I don't know why, for some reason, but I couldn't finish the poem. And I knew that it had to be also with my grandfather or something, but... And then my scholarship was ended and I had to go to the exile to Germany, and then I could finish this poem. So it's also interesting how that time works differently in poetry. Yeah. So now I read it and maybe it feels like the whole, like as if you wrote it in one set, but actually no. But when I read it, for me, also, time is, our perception of time in poetry is really different, and this is very wonderful. When asked how many languages I know, I'm quite embarrassed. No matter how many I know, it seems I still haven't overcome the important ones. If I could find a textbook on the spider's language, the language of dragonflies, or of rocks and black coots, the language of bicycles and reeds, the language of light and shadow, the language of jam smeared on a plate, and the language of dust. Then I would begin to speak, and maybe I'd even translate something from the language of lavender to bees, or from Lakish to Brickish. So now we are going to have a little turn into German poems, because these poems which I've read, they were originally written in Belarusian. And now I would like to read the first poem in the German original, and then you will hear the translation. Should I speak louder or it's okay? Thank you. Burg Ranis, Grenzfeste gegen die Slawen. Nach 10 Jahrhunderten lese ich hier Gedichte für die Krähen und Bienen, die es bis hier oben geschafft haben. Bin ich keine Sklavin? Bin ich eine für Menschen? Die Zeit versteht sich nicht mehr in diesen Mauern. Wir fangen an mit Phonetik, wie es bei Sprachen üblich ist. Verdächtige Laute, Akzente, immer verraten, aber immer ist immer ein schlechter Anfang. Gewalttätig, langsam. Wie viele Wörter muss ich in mir stecken, um frei sprechen zu können, um keine Fremde zu sein, um nicht verrückt zu werden wegen so vieler Bedeutungen. Mein Exil erzieht mich mit Schweigen und ich schreibe Gedichte, die ich nicht schreibe. You know the word burg. Yeah, so that's why I haven't discussed this first line with Annie, my translator, because she left it Burg Ranis, and I think maybe Castle Ranis is also possible. So, but to be sure, we know what we are talking about. Burg Ranis, border fortification against the Slavs. 10 centuries later, I come here to read poems to the crows and bees, which have made their way up here. I am not a Slav. What about to the people? In these walls, time no longer understands itself. We begin with phonetics, like you usually do with languages. Suspicious sounds, accents, always betray, but always is always a bad beginning. Violent, slow. How many words do I have to cram inside myself to be able to talk freely, to not be a stranger, to not go mad with all these meanings? My exile brings me up with silence, and I write poems which I do not write. Sometimes I wish I were a football match, so as to hear that excitement in your voice when you talk about me. And sure, as a European person, by football I mean soccer. Years pass by, months go by, days ran by, and the spider in the corner of the bathroom ceiling is the only one to see me naked. It's also a sad poem. I don't know, as a Slavic person, I'm very melancholic here with a sense of humor. To go for a walk, to hold a feather picked up from the ground in your hand, to encounter the wind resistance with it, to become a bird. In the infinitive, everything is allowed, especially to take a rest at this language bus stop, without tenses, without subjects, so as to enjoy the unlimited, the undefined, the incipient. Now in this poem, the first line will be in Belarusian, but don't worry, because the next line is the translation of this. And this is also maybe answering the unasked question, how do you write poems now in German and Belarusian? And sometimes it comes in one language, and then I continue in the other. Yeah, so that's also a good illustration how sometimes it works. Калі птушка злятае з галіны дрэва, when a bird takes off from a branch, the branch keeps on moving for a minute, remembering the bird's presence. You write at your own hope. I read at my own risk. Thank you for Roberto Juaros and the jasmine tea, explaining everything, proving everything, speaking, always being busy is exhausting. In a flat without doors, a tap is dripping. I tell myself it's a clock, so as not to go crazy. And I pray, dear words, keep us from the dark. But what if there is also a poem living in the dark, lonely and small, but still a poem? I hold out my pencil to it at my own risk, at my own hope. When a bird takes off from a branch, the movement remains. And yeah, there I hear, actually this poem was written as an homage to the 19th year birthday anniversary of a German poet, Rainer Kunze, who also, let's say, was an Eastern German poet and had to go to the West in order to escape those horrible things. He has a wonderful poem, 3 lines about jasmine tea. Not about jasmine tea. It's called Invitation to Jasmine Tea, and the meaning is like, come up, put off your coat, here you can keep silence. I'm always moved by this poem, sorry. And in this poem, I also tried to have this dialogue with him because Roberto Juaros, the Argentinian poem from the 60s, whom I mentioned, was also my other opening discovery because of Rainer Kunze, because he had one of the lines from Roberto Juaros as an epigraph to one of his books. And the idea of that, of those lines was like, I haven't done today anything, but so many things happened inside me. And I think that illustrates a lot how people who work mentally or like not only physically or not manually, how problematic for us it is to prove that we work. And these lines for me are like savings. I'm like, thank you. Now I know I have the right just to read books and think. There are giraffes running away out of my heart. They are far away and look like lightning bolts on the dark blue horizon. Who would have thought just an hour ago there was one which was pink and wanted to come up to me? And she came, and she was there on the dark blue horizon of my heart. But I didn't believe her and said, no, you are too light, too bright, too unusual. I'm sorry. I grew up amid more somber landscapes, where being bright means danger, where words are quiet, the colors whisper, and the giraffes run away. Spilled milk. The further we go, the whiter the landscape becomes. Snow, salt, and the fog of forgetting, where you are with yourself. Nemozine is looking for a photo. A few boxes contain decades. Pictures lie face down like soldiers on the field, witnesses to those who know this language. What does this language do to you? Evacuee, front, bombs. With the war come new words, and the new law too, only 1 egg per child, while officers fight over delicacies from France. Memory gives us a push. Go on then, run, keep up. But I just stare and can't remember why I'm wearing this dress. What am I doing among here, these people? And whose shadow is that? The pears in your school bag, the Turkish feathers beneath your palm, a snowball attack and dreams of Africa. Summer and winter slowly erase their borders. They become one big season, the season of childhood, where you are with yourself, of yourself, in yourself like never again afterwards. Blind spots are sometimes false memories. Where the cloth wears thin, it will tear, someone will certainly say. And we darn these holes, change our memory like an old coat so that you can still put it on, so that it can still be worn by the girl who comes after us. The further we go, the whiter the landscape becomes. She tilts her head over the glass of spilled milk, Mnemosyne. And this poem also was written as an homage to Barbara Frischmuth. She was an Austrian prose writer, and she died last year. And once I had to introduce her at the festival as a city writer of Graz, and I decided to introduce you through a poem. And that was also, the poem was based on her book about her childhood in the early or like war, post-war, Second World War years in small town in Austria where her family had a hotel. But I think today it reads like as if about the war we're having today. Today, they are all flying slow and low, casting shadows longer than their own lives. The green lace wind hurries. She still has work to do. The young bumblebee fastens his belt, ready for take-off. I alone sit motionless in hat and gloves, end of September, and feel like an alien on this garden planet. The other question, which you don't ask, but I answer. What about politics or like poetry and political poetry or for example, do I write poems which has to do with what happened to me and the situation in Belarus or something? And this poem I wrote when I just couldn't go back, and it was the first month, September. Everything was so, hard to perceive, hard to understand what to do, where to go. And it doesn't look like a political poem or a poem about the, I don't know, hard situation, but this is how poetry works for me. So the mushroom poem we had already. That's why. Then I have to pick. To find the right word, you have to go into the woods. Search for it like an enthusiastic mushroom forager. Studying the ground for hours, perhaps requesting help from the forest spirit. If words were flowers, it would be easier. Then we could go to the botanic gardens to enjoy their beauty and would exchange rare specimens. But words are probably mushrooms. They can be poisonous as well as delicious. And nobody quite knows just where they came from. So we are done with the German part. and coming back to the ones which were written in Belarusian. The heart regenerates more slowly than other organs and is never renewed completely. That's what it says in the textbook. This means, I think, that everyone in there will remain. The left side of one person's body will be erased. A face will disappear, a new one growing in place of the old. Languages, years, names will intermingle in my garden of mutants where we lost our way. The present tense is giving me difficulties. I'm better at the past, and so I live there. If only it were like in those movies, me losing my memory and the people who've moved into it without my permission. I'd calmly remove each recollection of them like a hair off a coat shoulder, already unable to recall whose it was. Today, I must write a new poem, you say in the morning, about the black dog who was my solitude. You should write about the duck who was your joy, I advise. And already I can see it becoming part of the poem. But today you're in melancholy, hardly laugh at jokes, and just don't see the duck as one of your characters, a fool, an oaf, fitting only for lullabies, limericks, and you have to write a serious, thoughtful text. So me and the dog are left on this side of inconceivable reality, while you and the dog are on the other. And the only place we can all meet is in this poem. Where snow falls today, I will be absent. Where silence attempts a confession, the intentions of others cannot be made out, and you can gaze for a long time at your impression in the glass, picturing a shortcut instead of your own long hair, but you never pick up the scissors. So I go to the place where the snow is born. Every day, the snow is a humanitarian, hiding life's flaws, promising nothing. He simply existed, being born and then dying. He could easily have started anywhere, in Armenia or Crimea, falling with all the weight of his own necessity, then melting away just as fast, having handed over the chill like a baton in the rally race, and afterwards wondering why my hands and heels are so cold, and trying to warm my fingers with his breath, my snow and I while away the hours in bed. With the futility of such attempts, each unable to confess this loneliness to the other. 13th October. A yellow pattern of flowers in the background of black. I inspect the photo, think, is that a piece of wallpaper or a curtain? Like a winter tree which has shed its leaves, an armchair in the corner exposes its bones. And such a blue sky, a sunny day, 13th October. Agrippina gives a plate of mushrooms to her husband, he dies, leaving the throne to her son, Nero. Mahler gives his first concert. Margaret Thatcher celebrates her birthday. Greenwich is made prime meridian. Larissa and Nastya are watching this day in history. Important dates, important people. See, Nastya, sweetheart, study hard, and maybe one day they'll talk about you on TV. Larissa works in a shop. Nastya studies medicine. Mom, did you know the femur is the longest bone in the human body, and we contain up to 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels? There's my clever girl. Let's go have dinner. Missile wound to the thorax with damage to internal organs, lacerations to the thighs, a fractured skull. I read the account of the injuries, think, what is it like to see that longest bone in the body with your own eyes and not on the mannequin in the classroom, but on your own leg? And for 20 whole minutes to hope that the ambulance will come and save you and Mom and everyone. But this is the firing zone. And the ambulance will not come. And 100,000 kilometers of vessels are suddenly redundant because what had flowed inside them has completely run out. Mom, look, I'm on the news. Turns out my greatest accomplishment was to die from shelling on the International Day for Disaster Reduction, and an important day in history for unimportant people. I really don't like to read this poem. You understand why? And it was written while I was still in Minsk and working for the trilateral contact group, who tried to resolve this conflict in Ukraine. At that time, it was called conflict. Now we can name it with a real word. And I translated lots of letters, documents, official documents. And this poem is based on one of this thing I had to translate, and it said like two civilian women were killed during the bombing, and it was just the description of the injuries, and it was very inhumane. It was very bureaucratic language. And it touched me so much, and I decided to find out who were those people. And in internet, I managed to find this information, how they were called, what were their names, what did they do a bit, and these last minutes of their life. So it's actually everything is truth, nothing is invented. And the horrible black humor about that is it's really 13th October, and 13th October is this day of prevention of those catastrophes. There are two more poems like this afterwards, but I'm not gonna read them. And now I would like to read a poem which gave a name to my. It's a translation collection in German, and it is called in German Trapezherz. It's one word. In English, it would be like the trapeze heart of a trapeze, trapeze and heart, I don't know, something like this. And also sometimes I get the questions, or like when people see this word trapeze, hard, you can think about lots of things, or like, what is this? And then I suggest, okay, now it's time you find out your own explanation, because when I read the poem, you will know the answer. Some people carry their hearts so high that you have to climb a ladder to reach them. Some people wear their hearts on their sleeve, while in others, the heart sinks down to their bodies to hide. Sometimes it happens that the heart flips over in the body, skips and plunges like an acrobat on a trapeze. And then it's high time to call an ambulance so that the heart can still be given to somebody else. And now we are reaching the final point. And I would like to read now the poem in Belarusian. And after that, you will hear and will also see the English version. And the thing you will see, the person who will read out, because it's a video, the poem is Annie Rutherford. And the video was made by a German artist who is also a painter, an artist, and he used his works, Clemens Bündich, and the poem by me. І сніла яна слова, і прачыналася, і не памятала яго. І было тое слова простым і цэльным, такім, што рабілася ціха і лёгка, быццам цяпер вядома ўсё. І рабілася ўсё зразумелым, патлумачаным і відавочным. І хацела яна прыгадаць тое слова, і шукаючы, вучыла розныя мовы, мацала языком дзёслы, свае і людзей іншых, слухала птушак і чула дрэвы, слухала шоргат і чула восаў, слухала ціш і не чула слова, і вярталася тады ў гарады і сядзела там моўчкі, каб не спудзіць рахманае сваё слова. І сярод натоўпу бачыла яна розных, і гукала іх: слова, ці ты гэта? І многія ёй адказвалі, і многім яна верыла, бо верыць хацела, бо стамілася, бо доўга ўжо не спала, і пачала сумнявацца. Можа, і няма таго слова. Каго не пытала, ніхто пра яго не ведаў. Сказалі толькі аднойчы: слова тое будзе апошнім. Як прыгадае яго, забудзецца на астатніх і сама станецца словам. Дзякуй.
And she dreamt about the word. And she awoke. And she could not remember it. And the word was simple and whole, making the world quiet and light, as if everything were now known. And everything became clear, explained and evident. And she wanted to remember the word. And in her search she learnt languages. Her tongue touched gums, her own and those of others. She listened to birds and heard the trees. She listened to murmurs and heard the wasps. She listened to silence and heard not a word. And she returned to the cities and sat there in silence, so as not to scare off her timid word. And among the crowd she saw others and called to them, "Word, Is that you? And many of them answered her. And many of them she believed. Because she wanted to believe, because she was tired, because she hadn't slept in so long. And she began to doubt whether her word even existed. No matter who she asked, no one had heard of it. Only one time somebody said, "This word will be the last word. And when you remember it, you will forget all others and become a word yourself."
A big round of applause. Keep it going for Volha Hapeyeva. Thank you so much. Thank you. What a joy, what a gift. Thank you. Books are for sale. That book is for sale. And it's for sale over here. They're $10 each or 2 for $20. And Mark will sell them to you. And I know Volha will be excited to sign them. Thanks so much for coming. Hope to see you at some of the events coming up at the Poetry Center next week with Julia Alvarez. I appreciate you being here. One more big round of applause for Volha Hapeyeva. Thank you.